How's it going, everybody? So we have a fun review today as we're talking Fear Street Prom Queen. It is really exciting to finally have, after so many years, a brand new Fear Street entry. Back in 2021, that trilogy of Fear Street movies that dropped one per week during the summer, that was a pretty fun idea. Of course, now we kind of downsized it because it is only one film and not three of them. But after 4 years with no Fear Street, I'll take what I can get at this point. At Shadyside High, prom season is underway, so the race is on for who ultimately will be crowned prom queen. Competition is cutthroat, especially for the underdog Lori, who notices that someone mysteriously is killing off the candidates one by one. Interestingly, this one actually is based off of one of the Fear Street novels. Unfortunately, Prom Queen is not one of the Fear Street books that I read, so I can't compare them all of that much. Sounds like, though, besides the basic premise surrounding Prom Queen, it deviates substantially. Albeit, though, they do very loosely address in the opening with a montage and in a surprise mid-credits scene that this is connected to the other three Fear Street movies. Adds a bit of another fun layer filling in the gaps in Shadyside's horrific past between this movie and what we saw in the other three Fear Streets. I don't know how anybody lives in Shadyside. Off the bat, Fear Street Prom Queen's greatest strength definitely is when the film leans heavily into embracing the slasher elements. Initially, they did have me a bit worried because the first kill or two that you see on screen, they're not particularly exciting. Once those slasher vibes kick into full gear, once we get into the prom setting of Prom Queen, things get truly gnarly. This killer brings a level of brutality that catches you a bit off guard at first, because this is a teen slasher after all. They really pull no punches when it comes to the gore and blood. Like, I'm talking various kids in this high school are losing limbs. And being that this is set in a giant high school, they find a way to actually throw in some variety, although this high school seems a little bit unrealistically huge, so we can have all these big set pieces inside of it. The worst kill in the film, in my opinion, and in worst here, I mean the most brutal, you'll definitely see coming, involving one of those giant paper cutting stations in a classroom. Not only is it just downright nasty, but it has some dark humor thrown onto it that made me kind of feel bad. If there's any kill in Prom Queen that rivals the bread cutter scene from '94, it's probably this one. Admittedly, I am kind of on the fence on how I feel about the overall design for the killer in Prom Queen. That is something I will be curious about how people feel about the killer's design. I do think the mask is creepy, but I'm not really feeling the giant red raincoat jacket. Definitely feels very reminiscent to the killer in Alice Sweet Alice if we're talking about throwbacks here, although that's not an 80s movie. As for the cast assembled, they're certainly far more positive than negatives, but I do think the cast by and large is a mixed bag. India Fowler, though, as the lead here, Lori, I think she is really solid. She's easy to find endearing and have sympathy for as this social outcast due to mysterious events surrounding her parents, and the fact that she has this desire for acceptance amongst her peers, and superficially, she believes winning the prom queen is going to fix all of these things. She also has a really cool best friend that it seems super into horror movie effects. Everyone else running for prom queen, they all fit into their cliche archetypes. Not much is given to them when it comes to depth. Before watching the movie, I had absolutely no idea that Ariana Greenblatt was even in the movie. She's certainly entertaining as this rebellious rocker girl. If you're going into this as someone that's a big Ariana Greenblatt fan, her role is very small, so don't expect a lot. Since this is set in the 80s, we have to have that stereotypical mean girl, the head mean girl. Tiffany in this probably has to be one of the worst mean girls I've seen in a movie in quite some time. Like, she's literally just pure evil every single time she's on screen. As a human villain, though, she certainly exceeds, I'll give them that. Something that impressed me and I was kind of surprised by is how there's a lot of well-known actors in the supporting cast, like Lily Taylor, who is this strict play-by-the-rules teacher. Speaking of Tiffany, her parents are played by Catherine Waterston and Chris Klein. Completely odd duo that you would never expect to see as a couple on screen, let alone having a child together. Maybe that's meant to be intentional because they're very peculiar, exuding a lot of really off-the-wall oddball behavior, along with pushing their daughter to try and become prom queen no matter what. In the era that we're in right now, don't get me wrong, I love the 80s and nostalgia for the 80s, but we've explored so much stuff set in the 80s, even within the horror genre, there isn't too much new to explore anymore. Something I will give Prom Queen credit for is making a fun enough effort to recreate the vibes in some instances. Most of that is relegated to the prom setup itself, which makes sense since a lot of the film takes place here. Something I really hope gets talked about a lot that I really think helps this movie overall with the vibe and tone is the score. The heavy electric synth adds a lot of fun thrills as it almost feels like it's its own character in ramping up the chase sequences and the horror in general. Besides those, and a handful of different sequences we see every now and then, mostly in the beginning, with these old school video camera effects, the kids filming stuff around the school, the aesthetic overall for Prom Queen doesn't feel overly late 1980s. Likewise with the story, it's a story that is very simple. It is not trying to break new ground within the genre. A lot of this we've seen before in other horror movies related around prom. Sometimes it does feel like they were trying to plant seeds in the story with different backstory stuff and romance. They keep a lot of it on the surface level, or ultimately it leads to nothing in the end. Now, this is a spoiler-free review, so I'm not going to touch upon the killer reveal all of that much because it is set up to be a sort of whodunit. You don't have to be a horror expert to know who exactly more than likely is going to be the killer by the end of the movie. I mean, technically this movie does have a whodunit aspect because you're supposed to be guessing on who exactly is running around killing all these different prom queen contestants. And unfortunately, when we get that reveal, they went for the most safe, obvious person that was doing it. Everything else about the climax and third act of Prom Queen, though, is pretty enjoyable otherwise. Fear Street Prom Queen is an all-around and fun new entry for the franchise. It succeeds enough in delivering an enjoyable teen slasher that makes up for most of the other shortcomings. If I were to rank all four of these Fear Street movies, I think I'd place it somewhere in the middle of the four, because I definitely don't think it's the best, but it's definitely not the worst either in my opinion. But once you get a chance to check out Fear Street Prom Queen when it hits Netflix very soon, love to know your thoughts down below. What'd you think of the film? Did you like the film? Did you not like the film? Thank you guys. As always, check out the videos. I always do appreciate it. Make sure you like the video and also subscribe to the channel to have the reviews, reactions, unboxings, and more. Until next time, I'll see you guys later.